No more begging broken mirrors to reflect my worth. No more trading gold for silence or shrinking on this earth.
Welcome back to the Spellbroken Life podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Jenkins, and today we're going to dive into one of the most important books in the trauma recovery world, The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel Kolk. This book has been foundational for me, not just because of my own healing from narcissistic abuse and domestic violence, but in learning to recognize how trauma shows up in the body, in my son, and in the people I work with. So today I'll share key insights from the book, how it shaped my journey into trauma-informed yoga, breathwork, and somatic embodiment healing, and how the body is the keeper of our stories. So let's talk about the author. Dr. Kolk is a Dutch psychiatrist and trauma researcher, and he had been studying trauma since the 1980s, pioneer research on how trauma changes the brain and body and how healing requires more than talk therapy. His work has shaped treatments like EMDR, yoga, neurofeedback, and somatic therapies, and in many ways, he's given language and validation to what survivors have always known, which is our bodies remember. So some key insights from the book. Trauma lives in the body. We have this fight, flight, freeze, even after the abuse ends. Memories are not always linear. They show up as sensations and flashbacks. Healing requires body-based approaches like yoga, breathwork, and somatic experiencing like movement. And safety and grounding come first. We need slow breathing, weighted blankets, nature walks, and things like noticing our feet on the floor. So let's talk about some of the most powerful insights from The Body Keeps the Score. First, trauma lives in the body. Even when the abuse stops, your nervous system doesn't always get the memo, and that's why you might find yourself on edge, unable to sleep, or struggling with chronic pain or autoimmune issues. It's not weakness, and it's not all in your head. It is your body remembering, and I always tell people, your body's first job is to keep you alive. So if you spent years in survival mode with an abuser, in court battles, and constant stress, your body learned to stay ready, and until you retrain it, that survival wiring is going to stay switched on. Memories aren't just stories, they're sensations. And Kolk explains in the book that trauma doesn't always file itself neatly in your brain as a narrative that you can tell from start to finish. Instead, it gets stored as fragments, like a smell, a sound, a body sensation, or a jolt of fear. And that's why you might suddenly feel like you're back in the abuse even when nothing is happening right now. Have you ever caught a whiff of cologne or heard a tone of voice, and instantly your stomach drops or your chest tightens? That is trauma memory at work. See, it bypasses logic and goes straight to your body's alarm system. Talk therapy alone isn't enough. Now, don't get me wrong. Talk therapy has value. I do it. But The Body Keeps the Score shows us that words alone can't reset a nervous system. Healing has to involve your whole body. And that's why approaches like EMDR, yoga, breathwork, and somatic experiencing, and even safe rhythmic movement are so powerful. They literally teach the body that it's safe in the present moment. So when you move, breathe, and ground yourself, you're giving your body a new experience that contradicts the old trauma wiring. You're saying, see, we can move, we can breathe, we can rest, and nothing bad is happening right now. And that's where the rewiring starts. Safety comes first. So before you dive into deep trauma work, you have to establish safety. So that means creating practices that calm the body. Slow breathing, gentle stretching, grounding with the weighted blankets, walking barefoot on the earth, or even just noticing your feet on the floor. And these little practices may seem simple, but they're building blocks. And they signal to your nervous system, you are not in danger right now. And from that place of safety, deeper healing becomes possible. So I've lived this firsthand with the man that I call the wound maker. Just 2 weeks after we married, I found out I was pregnant. That's when the strangulation began. Even though I never believed I could personally go through with an abortion, I remember saying that I wanted one because of him, because I didn't want to bring a child into a life with that kind of abuse. And I ended up miscarrying at 7 weeks. And here's the thing, my body kept that score. The shock, the grief, the physical trauma of violence, it lived in me long after. And later he would weaponize even my words in that moment of despair. His mother had studied energy work, and he could talk the talk on the language of consciousness like a so-called light worker. And when I miscarried, he turned on me and said I had energetically killed the baby. And that's the kind of psychological warfare that survivors face, where your pain is twisted into blame. So later, I took a leave of absence from work, and that's when the wound maker came back trying to help with yard work after our separation. And I let him because I was sick and I needed the support. But the moment he stepped into my space, my body collapsed. My blood pressure dropped. I felt like I was going to faint. And that jolt of anxiety, just like before a car accident, came rushing back. He didn't have to raise his voice or even lay a hand on me that day, but my body remembered everything for me. So later, when the wound maker went to help my son's father in the custody case, they used that one moment when I expressed despair about the pregnancy as a way to attack me. They painted it as a fixation with a killing an unborn child and used it to argue that I was unstable, even suggesting I might harm my toddler son. That is mind-blowing to me on so many levels because it's also a reflection of how women's bodies, women's choices, and even our moments of pain are turned into weapons against us. And to hear that argument not just come from him, but supported by a supposedly progressive attorney representing my son's father was almost devastating. It shows how survivors can be re-traumatized, not only by abusers, but by the very systems that claim to uphold that justice. Now, I realize that an attorney's first and foremost responsibility is to look out for their client, but it was still mind-boggling that she would put her name on something that actually isn't even against the law. It is not against the law to get an abortion. Regardless of your opinions, we're not arguing those here today. Regardless of your opinions, it is legal here in this state. So for it to be called what it was called in that motion was just mind-blowing to me. So I want to take a quick pause here and share something that's been a huge part of my own healing journey. Now, I've uncovered some incredible water technology through waterprints.life, and this isn't just about drinking clean water. It's about supporting your body and your nervous system at the deepest level. Now, they have the PureWay whole house filtration system, and they have the multi-pure under sink filters for apartments so that you can finally have clean, mineral-rich water right at home. And with the PureWay system, you can have it at every tap. But what excites me even more is how they have these other products that they work with that address the energetic side of healing. I started with molecular hydrogen. I got this machine when I was having all the brain fog and when my body felt like it was collapsing. And I can't tell you how much it helped clear that brain fog and that mental fatigue that so many trauma survivors deal with. Now I'm working with coherent water tools like the Aqua Energizer and the Cosmic Tower, and they help unlock stored grief and loss, both at the cellular level and the energetic levels. So if you're curious about water, not just as hydration, but as a partner in your healing, go check out waterprints.life, and I'll put the link in the show notes.
This episode of the Spellbroken.life podcast is brought to you by waterprints.life. Not just water filters, but water wisdom. Our bodies are over 70% water, and so is the earth. Waterprints.life helps you reattune to both, with personalized consulting to clear contaminants, correct structure, and restore sacred relationship with your water. From filtration to energetic imprinting, you don't just purify your source, you resource your purity. Visit them at www.waterprints.life. Drink as though your soul depends on it, because it does.
Part of my healing work also comes through lineage. My grandmother had what she called the sight, and in Celtic tradition, that meant perceiving what others couldn't. The hidden currents beneath the surface, the way energy sits in the body, and the way emotions ripple quietly through a room. Now, I do have a lot of Native American ancestry, but unfortunately, my grandfather was separated from his mother early. She died in childbirth, so he was not able to inherit firsthand any techniques from that culture. Everything from that side of my ancestry, I've had to remember inherently. But from my grandmother, she used to joke around and call it ESP, but it wasn't like this parlor trick. It was literally her way of listening, paying attention, and knowing when something was off, and then laying her hands or even her words through singing and humming in just the right place to bring comfort and release. And that's what she passed down to me. It's not a formal system. It's not a certificate that you hang on the wall. It is a way of feeling energy as a living current. She taught me that you don't force it. You listen to it. You notice where grief pulls in the body, where fear hides, where love gets stuck, and you gently help it flow again. And this lineage, along with my own lived experience and the wisdom from The Body Keeps the Score, inspired me to guide others. In my healing sessions, I weave together breath work, somatic practices, yoga, nervous system regulation, plant medicine, and intuitive guidance to help people release trauma stored in the body. I see energy centers, places where grief, rage, and trauma often lodge themselves until they're acknowledged and released. And when we breathe and when we move and we open these centers, we create space for love, vitality, and truth. So for me, recovery just isn't in the mind. It's in the body, in the nervous system, in the breath, and in the energy field that surrounds us. And that's why I don't call myself a coach or a mentor. I am going to call myself a tantrika, a priestess of the body, a temple keeper who works with movement, breath, and energy to help survivors reclaim that sacred current within them. Because you're not broken, you're becoming whole. And by the way, if you're in Eastern North Carolina, I also offer free maternity photo sessions for survivors of domestic violence, narcissistic abuse, and legal abuse, because I believe pregnancy is one of the most vulnerable times in a woman's life, a time when we're often made to feel powerless or even ugly. But I see it as a time when the body is the most divine, and my gift is to help women embody the goddess within and capture that beauty, so they have images that remind them of their strength and sacredness whenever they need it most. Before we wrap up, I want to extend an invitation. If you're a survivor with a story to tell or an expert working in trauma recovery, I'd love to feature you on the Spellbroken.life podcast. Your story could be the light that someone else needs. So visit my website at spellbroken.life and click Be a Guest to apply. Do you have a story that needs to be heard? Do you have hard-won wisdom that could break someone else's spell? Then I want to talk to you. Spellbroken.life is collecting stories from the underworld of narcissistic abuse. Whether you're a survivor, a practitioner, a therapist, a lawyer, or a truth teller in the trenches, the Spellbroken Life is looking for bold voices who aren't afraid to speak the truth and light the way. If you've lived it, studied it, healed through it, you've made it back from the dark and have something to say, I want to share the mic with you. Send your pitch to hello@spellbroken.life or visit www.spellbroken.life/apply to learn more. Follow the conversation on Instagram and TikTok at spellbroken.life. Subscribe on YouTube for new episodes, deep dives, and sacred fire. Be bold, be heard, be a guest on the show, because someone out there is waiting to hear exactly what you've lived through and how you reclaimed your throne. If this conversation today resonated with you, I want to leave you with a few resources that have been life-changing for me. What we discussed here today is first the book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel Kolk, and I will drop my Amazon affiliate link in the show notes if you'd like to order it there. It is one of the most powerful books I've read on how trauma lives in the body and how we can begin to free ourselves. And I will say it can be triggering, so go slow. Give yourself permission to put it down when you need to, and pair your reading with self-care practices that ground and soothe you. Secondly, if you're curious about nervous system support, I personally use Optimized Minerals. It's been an incredible tool for me in balancing stress and calming my body. So I'll also link my affiliate in the notes. Just so you know, commissions from these links do help keep this podcast going and available for free. And because I never want to leave you without support, I'll also include the numbers for domestic violence hotlines and online resources. So if you're in a situation where you feel unsafe or you're navigating abuse, please know there are people who will listen and help. You do not have to go through it alone. And finally, if you'd like to stay connected and receive practices, stories, and updates from me, head over to my website, click the button that says, Yes, I'm ready to heal. And that will sign you up for my newsletter where I share more tools, resources, and inspiration as we walk this healing journey together. So remember, you are not alone, and your body is not your enemy. It is the keeper of your story, and it can also be your guide to healing. Until next time, I'm Michelle Jenkins, and thank you for listening to the Spellbroken.life podcast. I just want to thank you for listening to today's episode on breaking free from the narcissist empath dynamic. If you're ready to stop repeating toxic loops and start healing, I've got tools that help me on my journey. Head over to my website at www.spellbroken.life for the latest on resources, healing products, and exclusive discounts on the tools that supported my growth from start to now. These aren't just products. They're part of a lifestyle change that empowered me to stop repeating old patterns. So let's create the life you deserve. Take the next step on your healing journey today. Check the show notes for more. And by the way, I got all of this from the axioms of the ether. The anchor is active, the ray is restored, and the bridge light is claimed. Thank you for listening. Until next time, keep breathing in truth and exhaling what was never yours to carry.
I've been running on adrenaline, fight or flight medicine, heart rate spiking like a crime scene's evidence, flashback heavy, can't trust my own skeleton, every scar's archived, my muscles the testament, can't sleep, can't breathe, triggers in my marrow, mind say chill, but my veins shoot arrows, memory ain't linear, as visceral as sword, don't forget a damn thing, the body keeps score.